So, good day everyone. We are back and this is our second part of discussion. Yesterday, we discussed the different parts of the body of the thesis and we mentioned that chapter 1 is entitled The Problem in Its Background. Under chapter 1, we have the introduction, significance of the study, theoretical framework, and conceptual framework, statement of the problem, hypothesis of the study, definition of terms, and scope and delimitation. So please be reminded that when you discuss the introduction, as we discussed yesterday, you need to be guided by the TIOC approach. T stands for the trends, I for the issues or the problem of the study, O for the objective, and C for the contribution. What is important when you write the introduction is you were able to read a lot of literature. And this literature must be related to the topic that you are working on because, as I've been always saying, you cannot write something if you have not read anything yet. That is why when you write your introduction, there will be a lot of citations in your paper because what you're going to put in your introduction are coming from the literature. So if you are not yet done reading the literature, you still have more time to catch up and read a lot of literature because your introduction will talk about literature. When we say highlighting the trends, as the term implies, trends, you should always use updated references. You do not use obsolete references because for you to be trending, the citation must be updated. Now, after introduction is the significance of the study. In here, you are going to identify probable users or beneficiaries and you are going to explain how they will benefit from your study, specific ways on how they will get the benefits from your study. The next part of chapter 1 is, of course, the theoretical and conceptual framework. When you say theoretical framework, this is the clear presentation of the theory which explain why the study exists. So there must be a specific theory that is best fitted for your study. And there should also be an appropriate development of conceptual frame with reference to the problem of the study. If, for example, your independent variable is intelligence quotient and the dependent variable is academic performance, then that is going to be your conceptual frame. And you need to look for a theory that supports your proposition that intelligence quotient can really influence the academic performance of the students. Now there is an approach that I'd like to share with you. We call it the SEC approach. S stands for state the theory, E, explain the theory, and C, contextualize the theory. In stating the theory, there are about 3 suggested sentence systems that you can use. First one is, you may say, the theoretical basis of this paper is, you may say, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Or, this study is theoretically anchored on, and then you state the theory. Or the third one is, this paper is premised on, and then you may again state the theory. That is letter S under SEC approach. E stands for explain the theory. When you say explain, you need to expound specifically the explanation of that theory. If, for example, you're going to use Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there are so many levels of that that hierarchy of needs, from physiological needs up to self-actualization needs. And you may opt to choose one from among those hierarchy needs. And that's what you call explain the theory. So you may say, the theoretical basis of this paper is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then comma, which states that, and then that's the time that you explain the theory. And letter C is contextualization. Contextualization can also be a localization of the theory. If the theory is generic, the conceptual model is the application of the theory or the contextualization of the theory. And this is best represented by your IV and DV. It is also relevant that you explain the content of your IV and DV. The next part of chapter 1 is, after the theoretical and conceptual framework, is the statement of the problem. This is a clear identification of the problem statement, and it is recommended that the problem statement is succinct, unambiguous statement of specific problems related to the major problem. So when we say statement of the problem, there are two types. It may be major problem or a specific problem. A major problem is usually represented by two or more variables, meaning all the variables of the study must be present in the major problem. If your IV is intelligence quotient of the students and your DV is academic performance, then you may say the major problem of the study is to determine the influence of students' intelligence quotient on their academic achievement. So that will be your major problem. And then the rule of the thumb is that you need to count the number of IV and DV of your paper. If you have one IV and one DV, there is a big possibility that you can come up with two possible specific questions. And you may use straight line or arrow diagram connecting the IV to the DV. And that arrow can be your third question. So meaning to say, from the IV-DV model, let's say your IQ is your IV and your academic performance will be the DV, you can come up already with three specific questions. So you may say, specifically, this study will seek to answer the following questions. Number one, what is the level of intelligence quotient of the students in terms of, you may say 1.1, quantitative, 1.2, linguistic, 1.3, reasoning ability. And then number two, how may the academic performance of the students be described in terms of 2.1, science, 2.2, English, 2.3, mathematics. And number three will be the conjecture question. This is now the bivariable question of your study. You may say, does the level of intelligence quotient exert significant influence on students' academic performance? So that is a bivariable question. Why bivariable? Because the question presents two variables already, and that is intelligence quotient and academic performance. The first two questions are what we call univariable questions because the question presents one variable only. And some panel members would recommend an additional question like what implications may be drawn from the findings of the study, and therefore that can be your fourth question. The next part is hypothesis of the study. Hypothesis is the scientific guess of the study, and usually this is an assumption of the relationship between two or more variables. So the consideration is that the statement must have two variables. So from the problem statement, the third question is a bivariable question. So meaning to say, that is the question where you can draw or develop a null hypothesis. So you may say, um, the following null hypothesis will be tested at 0.05 level of significance. And then you state the hypothesis like, intelligence quotient of the students does not significantly affect their academic performance. So that is your null hypothesis. After the hypothesis is the definition of terms. You only define key terms. When you say key terms, those are your major terminologies. And that can be seen in the IV and DV. In your case, if your IV is IQ and your DV is academic performance, therefore you only need to define two terminologies, and that is intelligence quotient and academic achievement or academic performance. And definition of terms can be done conceptually or operationally. When you say conceptually, you define the terms based on how the authors define the term. No? Meaning there should be a citation. There is a source for your definition. On the contrary, when you say operational definition of terms, you define the terms based on how you use the terms in the study. So when you say operational definition, you may say, as will be used in the study, academic performance will be measured in terms of English, math, and science. So that is an example of operational definition of terms. But of course, those ways in defining the terms can be used at the same time. You can use both conceptual definition at the same time operational definition. And finally, the last part of chapter 1 is scope and delimitation. In discussing the scope and delimitation, you need to answer basic questions such as, what is your study all about? So when you say what is your study all about, you need to answer the variables. You need to explain the variables of the study. What are the variables of the study? You need to explain that. You may also want to discuss who are your respondents and where are you going to conduct the study. In discussing the question who and where to conduct the study, you must be guided by the Data Privacy Act of 2012. There should be no mention about the name of the institution or specific name of the respondents. You may decode, for example, the name of the school, like School A, Company A, or one of the companies in the Philippines, so that the respondents will be protected. And of course, you may include in your scope and delimitation the timeline. When are you going to start the study? So I think that ends for our second part of discussion about chapter 1, and I would be very glad if you will post questions related to the topics that we discussed. Again, thank you so much, and keep safe, and God bless.